Welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. And today I want to tell you about what little fish mean, because this is the time of year, the pre-spawn, where little fish can tell you a lot about what you're doing. You're not getting a lot of bites, and a little fish can be the whole key to a good day of fishing. Around the spawn, little fish might mean that there's big fish coming right behind them. And in the post-spawn, some really magical things happen with the size of fish. So let me kind of just dive into what this means when you have different size classes of fish and try to explain to how these little clues coming from the little fish can help you catch big fish. So I'm a firm believer that most public lakes and rivers in this country have typically like 3 size classes of fish. You know, and I want to talk about how old the fish are, because depending on where you live in the country, you know, if you live in New York, a 6-pound bass may be 20 years old. If you live in Florida, a 10-pound bass may be 10 years old. So I'm going to try to talk about how old the fish are, but you can kind of gauge the size of the fish by the age of the fish. So let's just talk about here on Guntersville. Back to what I was saying, I feel like there's 3 size classes that come around every 10 years. So we have some 10-year-old fish in this lake. They typically are those bigger fish, the ones that you really want to try to catch 1 or 2 of them in a day. If you can catch 5, you're most likely going to win the tournament. But they're those 7 and 8 pound bass, 6, 7, 8 pounds, somewhere around there, and maybe they're 9 or 10 years old. But they spawned back in 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. And they're getting up in age, and who knows, their mortality rate is going to go way up. This might be the last year anyone catches them. They might, you know, there's a lot of reasons why they might perish in the next year or 2. But let's just say those are the biggest ones. They're about 10 years old. Then you have 4 and 5, 6-year-old fish. They're going to be 3 or 4 pounds, and the lake is full of those. You definitely want to be weighing those fish in. That's very important. Those fish are going to teach you a lot about what you need to be doing. And then you have those smaller fish that are probably less than 2 years old. They're typically on whatever lake and river you fish. Those are non-keepers. They're going to be right underneath that slot. I don't know why that works the way it does, but typically the fish that are right under the slot, and you know how those days go where it's just short fish, short fish, short fish, short fish, those fish will tell you a lot too about what you need to be doing. So in the pre-spawn, on a lake that is very flat, and I think of those Florida lakes, I think of lakes where they're not really using the structure. They're not using the contours, you know, like they do highways with the creek channels and the river channel, and then they swim into a drain, and then they go up on a flat and spawn. Those fish are very calculated. That's like the Tennessee River. That's like a lot of man-made impoundments where it's a very defined creek channel. That is going to be completely different than natural lakes like Lake Okeechobee, the Florida lakes that don't have a whole lot of contours. They're more of like a big cereal bowl. This is going to be different. So if you live on a man-made lake that has a dam, very defined river channel, very defined creek channel, those fish, when you start catching those really small fish in the pre-spawn, let's say you go up on a stretch of docks, there's a creek channel that pulls in pretty close to the docks, and then there's a drain around the docks, and then you have a flat that the boathouses and the docks are on, you start catching a bunch of really little fish. That may be a long time before you see big fish show up there. You know, we have water right now that's in the high 40s, and you can catch some little fish on the docks. But those docks, to me, won't probably start seeing bigger, you probably won't start seeing bigger fish show up on those docks for at least another month, because they are just that far back on the road. Now, a fish like that lives on Okeechobee, where it's just a big flat, you don't have a big road that is the creek channel, you basically have fish that roam around a lot on these flats, and at any given time, if you're catching little ones, you could be a day or 2 away of sunshine for a big female to pull up in there. Now, typically, males and females are going to pair up similar age. So you might see a 3-pound male, which it could be 6 or 7 years old, pair up with a 9 or 10-pound female. And then you might see a 1.5-pound male be with a 4-pound female. So they're going to be closer in age, but again, on those flatter natural lakes where they don't have a creek channel, a defined highway to get where they want to go, you could be catching 12 inchers one day and a 9-pounder pull up there the next day. I've seen that a lot in a lot of those natural Florida lakes. On a lake like Guntersville, where you have river channels, creek channels, you have those roads, those fish might be a mile back on the road. They might still be out in the main river channel, and they're going to need a month of migration into the creek channel, into the drain. They might stay in the drain for a couple of weeks, feed up like most pre-spawn bass do, and then get up on that flat. But we're talking this could happen in a month. So in the pre-spawn, I want to be catching quality fish. You know, I don't need to be catching the biggest fish on the lake, but I do want to be catching those 2 or 3 pounders on a lake that is man-made, where there's a defined creek channel. There's defined structure, contour change. There's a lot of that. I want to be catching some quality in areas. Even if it's just 2 pounds, I want to be catching healthy 2-pounders, and I don't want to be catching those real little ones. I want to be catching, 2 pound solid males. That's where you're going to see those 4 and 5, 6 pound females pull in there. Again, they like to kind of school and match up with ages that are close. So then the other thing with pre-spawn fishing in the flatter lakes, the more natural lakes, you can be a day away. So you may have a day where, man, I went out and caught 9 or 10, 12 inchers. Those spots that you found, those 9 or 10, 12 inchers, they could have 5 or 6 pounders there. It happens like that on a flatter natural lake. It's a little bit different on a lake that has a lot of definition, a lot of contour change, a lot of creek channels and river channels, and lanes where these fish can really, see where they're going and go, and they know where they're at, and they can really figure out where they're going. It can be a whole lot different. So let's move over to what fish in the pre-spawn, what fish in the spawn, what fish in the post-spawn. We'll start with the post-spawn. So in the post-spawn, this is a magical time of year, and a lot of weird things can happen. You can go out, and I've done this a lot, you can go out and catch 8 pounds in practice, 5 fish that weigh 8 pounds, and be thinking, there's no way I'll ever be able to catch 16 or 17 pounds tomorrow. And it just totally changed. I don't know why this happens, but the magic of the post-spawn is big fish just show up. So what will tend to happen is when you figure out what you need to be doing, let's say it's flipping, let's say it's swimming a jig, maybe throwing a bigger swim bait, you'll have days where one day of the tournament you come in with 7 pounds, and it was a really grueling day. You caught a lot of those 2 years and younger fish, the 2-year-old and younger, and some of those keeper 3 to 4-year-old fish, but you didn't see any of those older ones. The next day you might catch all of those 3 to 4-year-old fish, and then even mix in a couple of those 7, 8-year-old giants for your lake. And that just happens. I don't know why. Don't give up on the post spawn, and don't lose your confidence, because it can just get really good in the same exact areas. If there's a lot of fish there, big ones can just show up. Now in the spawn, I kind of explained this a little bit earlier. They want to spawn with similar age groups, and depending on the contours of your lake, if you're catching really little ones on a lake that has a lot of contour, that typically is not a good sign for quality to move in there. On more natural lakes, if you're catching really little ones, that is not always the worst indicator of you having a bad tournament. A big fish could be really close. So it just depends on the lake. Is it a lake where it's very flat and those fish roam around a lot? They don't have a very defined lane to get where they're going. Bam, they could be there in no time. Because those fish typically on lakes like that, they're not far away from the spawning flats anyways. If you're thinking of a lake that I'm talking about, it's just a big flat lake. It doesn't really have a big drop off. Those fish aren't really going to ever go too far away. They may be really hard to catch for most of the year, but they're just kind of suspended over shallow water within, maybe 100 or 200 yards of where they're going to spawn. And then they roll in, and then you can catch them, and they haven't seen a bait for 8 or 9 months because they're just kind of swimming around suspended. It's different on lakes like Guntersville, Tennessee River, any type of lake that has, it's a man-made lake where there's creek channels and river channels. Those fish may be way, way far from where you're catching those little fish. So you got to kind of have a little bit better quality coming from those lakes. And then the pre-spawn, I've kind of already explained this too. It really depends on the weather and the time of year. here in North Alabama, those fish don't like to spawn until April, so you don't want to get in a rush. You don't want to just, go right to the bank and think there's going to be a bunch of big fish spawning, because we've had a couple warm nights, a couple sunny days. They are going to wait. Those bigger fish are smart. Those are the wisest fish on the lake, and they know that a lot of things could happen to deter them. They want it to be consistent. They want to roll up there and do their thing without a weather change messing it up. A lot of different factors can mess up the spawn. So those wiser fish that have done it year after year after year, they know to wait. They're not going to try to go up real early and spawn just because you've had a couple warm days. So I hope that helps you guys. The pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn, in my opinion, is the most fun time of year to fish. It's spring fishing. Pretty much every lure in your tackle box gets to play this time of year, and it can be just a really, really awesome time to get out on the water. So thanks for watching this. I hope it helps you guys this spring. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.